Penix.com.
Top 5 Pac-12 quarterbacks. Then we'll move on to a new position. It'll be up for debate with the top 5 committee, all of whom don't get anything but the top 5 play at home game, which is just in your own imagination. But yes, we have a committee, and it worked out today. This one was, and the reason I saved it for the end is, this was the easiest to come up with. The Pac-12 actually has a fantastic stable of quarterbacks. We could have theoretically done maybe even a top 8 here and gone in, whereas some of the other conferences, it was hard to get to 5 because there's so many unknowns, especially in modern college football with transfer portal and who's in and out and what's going on there. And there was a big transfer. I'll say we left off DJU because Garrett made the point if he had to transfer for a reason. So we left him off, and we're going to say, start here with number 5, Cam Ward. Had a really good year. I mean, a really good year at Washington State. We'll see how they do again. Really transitioned well from Incarnate Word into the Pac-12. Was really fun to watch. And Wazoo, I think their arrows pointed, at least tilting up. As long as he's still there and playing like he did last year, they have to shore up some things, and part of that's him. But really was impressed with how he played last year.
Yeah, I mean, to make the big jump that he did, I mean, that's pretty significant going from Incarnate Word to Washington State. So, yeah, sensational job in making that transition. Had some nice numbers and really did a world of good for that program who, obviously is in a bit of a transition. And, he did a good job as far as, not only matching what he did at Incarnate Word, but in probably some cases exceeding that. And he's get a bit better as far as probably his completion percentage. He could get probably a little bit better there. Maybe I'm wrong. He has like 64%.
Yeah,
I feel like
he could be up.
He could improve that. But yeah, I mean, 23 to 9 touchdown interception ratios, fine. Maybe cut down on those slightly, but yeah, I mean, that's nitpicking. He did a great job for them, and I'm excited to see the follow-up through for 3,000 plus yards. Expect a lot more in 2023.
I don't have his trending. I could have looked up his stats, but it seemed like to me about middle of the year, I was wondering about whether he was wearing down a little bit, but he ended up playing very well.
And then, there's a bit of people now have film on you that they see you, they watch.
Throwing it 40 times a game too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the completion percentage. That's part of the turnovers. Is he was a lot of their offense and throwing it just all the time. So I'm curious to see how maybe they how maybe they change that up here coming up next season. But yeah, I think he did kind of. I don't know what kind of injuries he was dealing with, but it did seem to taper off a little bit as the second half of the year progressed.
Number 4, Washington's Michael Penix was, just a godsend for the Huskies last year. And, people maybe kind of forgot about him because he was in Indiana and got hurt. And then here he comes and transfers, but was really fantastic. Washington will be in contention for the conference title this year. Again, they're really deep. They've got a great thing going, and Michael Penix is one heck of a leader and really a fun player to watch.
As a lefty, sometimes it looks different with the way the ball comes out. And against Texas, I didn't see him throw the ball deep very well, but it seemed like he could nickel and dime and just kill you. But very, very poised is what I remember, because there were times, of course, when that game wasn't easy, but that's what I remember most about him.
Yeah, he's a really good player. He was good at Indiana, just certainly not surrounded or watched by nearly as many people as he would be last year. At least it feels like he was kind of just a guy probably not a ton of people knew about, but your diehards, certainly knew what he was doing for the Hoosiers. But yeah, he had a great year. I didn't expect him to beat Texas in that final game, but that was impressive, even if he wasn't, at his best necessarily. They're definitely excited about what's going on in Seattle, and he's a major reason why that is. So, yeah, I'm very excited to see. Some people thought he should get Heisman consideration, or not like a winner of it, but just he's a player of the year type of caliber type of guy. And, still obviously in a very crowded conference quarterbacks-wise, but he's a very good player.
Yeah. Number 3, Cam Rising. I mean, they're like 2-time defending conference champion quarterback here, and tough guy, has overcome a lot of injuries and coming back for that last year. He is the ultimate coach quarterback, like the way that it seems like Kyle Whittingham and him can kind of share a brain in that. They're very he's kind of picked that up really well. I love the way he plays with, I don't want to say reckless abandon isn't the way he plays, but he's just tough and he's gritty. And
I'd go in a dark alley.
Yeah,
I'd want him to be. We may get both beat the hell out of us, but he's got that. Yeah, he has that leadership type. It seems like that just feeling that let's go. Get on his back and let's go.
Yeah, I want to go back to Penix, and I mentioned it with Ward. I should also mention Penix as well, throwing it about 57,000 times a game.
54 against Texas.
I don't know how sustainable it is or how well that leads to success for anybody who's doing that. But, yeah, I mean, Penix was another guy who just threw it constantly, and so maybe he'll have a bit more of a balance this year. Certainly Ward could use a lot more of a help around him to help balance things out, but – Cam Rising's super tough. I mean, at one point in time, he was the next Texas Golden Boy, and that didn't ever materialize, obviously, which is why he's at Utah. But I was super impressed. I thought he was going to be a guy who just faded away and was a bust of a recruit or just a guy who didn't quite become a superstar. And he's living up to his billing. I mean, he's leading them to titles. He's got them in consideration for amongst the top teams in the country, and I respect the heck out of what he's done. He's blossomed really well.
He, by the way, back to Cam Ward. No, I'm sorry, to Penix. He threw the ball over the place. He had 2 games, I think. One game where he threw the ball less than 30 times in a game.
Yeah,
he's got a rubber arm.
That's kind of weird considering how many good running backs they have, but they have several there at Washington. Number 2. Bo Nix. This one was, Kenny Dillingham, what he did. Now he's at Arizona State, but he's the offensive coordinator. The way that he took what Bo Nix was the ultimate, feast or famine kind of quarterback, and he would show up in the big moments. I would compare him to, when John Belushi was on Saturday Night Live, there would sometimes be so messed up before the show started. They didn't know if he was going to be good. And then he'd roll out there and do it. And that was kind of Bo Nix at Auburn. First part of the game is how is they even in this thing? He's not playing well. And then all of a sudden they're within a score or two late in the game where they have enough time to get drives. And then Bo Nix, comes back and makes ridiculous plays and they win. Somehow Oregon found whatever button it was to push in Bo Nix that, hey, why don't you do that instead of for 10 minutes for the whole game? And he did it certainly last year with that Oregon team. Now, granted, I think surrounded by a little bit of better cast, but he elevated everyone around him last year. And Bo Nix, would be number 1 on this list if not for who is the obvious number 1.
There's something to be said for a change of scenery. Mm-hmm. Something to be said for being older as well. So I think those probably helped aid him tremendously. I was happy for the guy. He took a lot of S when he was at Auburn. Was a scapegoat in a lot of ways. And to see him go and, lead them to a pretty incredible season. I mean, they lost 3 games, but only one of them was super out of hand. So that was, Georgia right out of the gates, and we saw what they did the rest of the way. But, that was not indicative of all of how the rest of the season was going to go for Oregon. So they rebounded quite nicely. And then their other 2 games late in the year, unfortunately for them, to top 25 conference opponents, and they lost by a total of 8 points or something like that in between the 2. They were fantastic outside of that Georgia game, and there's a giant, I think, expectations for him and the Ducks this year because he's coming back and because of what we saw last year.
Yep. All right, you don't even have to do one.
Hey, yeah. Number 1, some lame dude named Caleb Williams who can't do anything. No, the guy that there's players that come along every once in a while that you could, NFL teams will go, you know what, let's not tank, but we're not going to try that hard down the end of the stretch. There's going to be a lot of guys that go on IR that aren't coming back.
Are you saying tanking?
I think they're going to there's going to be a couple teams the last 4 weeks that are going to go, you know what? We're going to go get this dude right here with Caleb Williams. He's that good. He's very Mahomes-like in what you see. And, he won the Heisman Trophy for a reason. It wasn't politics or anything. The the proof is in the pudding with him, and we'll see how USC responds to last year knocking on the door of winning the conference title and being in the college football playoff, but not. The reason they didn't win it wasn't because of Caleb Williams. I mean, he did get hurt in the game, in the championship game, and that hurt them. But it was because Utah was out and out tougher on the other side of the ball, and not fantastic, but tougher when it came to stopping people. But Caleb Williams, he's worth by himself for any team 9 wins. Like if you have him and nothing else, you're probably 9-3. That's how good he is. And if you just put a little bit more around him, you see what they can do. So
did they lose their last 2 games?
What?
Did USC lose their last 2 games to Utah and then to
Tulane? They would have lost in the bowl game.
Yeah. 2 classic games, but okay. Greg, on Caleb?
Utah probably still wins that game, but him being hurt definitely helped out tremendously, especially, as that thing went on along. I think that mattered a great deal, but they were a bit of a one-trick pony, you could say, at USC as far as just offense and no defense, really. I know that's something they've talked a lot about in the media, but it sounds an awful lot like what we heard in Norman at times. And I don't know. All of the evidence is in one column when it comes to Lincoln Riley teams, and there's basically no evidence on the other side of them being like some super balanced powerhouse. I mean, some of their championship runs, their defenses were probably better than given credit for, but I don't know. Words don't really mean anything to me if I'm a USC fan. I want to see some defense being played. And if they let Caleb Williams go, as he most certainly will after this season, without, supplying with a bit more around him, I think that's a real missed opportunity and a real shame, because I don't think there's just another dude coming down the pipeline like him. I know that they went from Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts and all that. With the transfer portal, you can do that. But I think he's different. I think that's not a guy that you just plug and replace just like that. So should be a hell of a year. He'll be on top of all the mock drafts, I would imagine. And if he's not, there's some D lineman or something I'm not thinking of. But this is going to be built up to be a big last hurrah for him and for Lincoln Riley and the Trojans as far as the Caleb Williams era goes. So excited to watch him play. He's incredible. I mean, he's a stellar player, and amazing that we watched Baylor kind of kick his ass in Oklahoma's butt. I know Oklahoma fan, of which I'm one of them, will say, I never use this excuse because I was paying attention to the other side as well. But he was out already sniffing around the USC job and all of that. I remember that being the big excuse. But, I mean, that was one of Caleb Williams' worst games by far. So rare to see him have a day like that, and I don't expect to see many of those coming up. I think he'll be right there, maybe the next Archie Griffin, the only other guy to do that back-to-back Heisman.
That game against Baylor in 2021, they tied him up like a pretzel, and you could see that coming. In fact, they benched him, and they brought in Spencer Rattler, because that was such a frustrating day at Baylor's defense just beat up Oklahoma in that game in Waco a couple of years ago. What do those 5 guys have in common?
Transfers.
Every one of them was somewhere else. Rising at Texas, Nix at Auburn, Caleb at Oklahoma, Penix at Indiana, Cam Ward was at Incarnate Word. Every one of them. 5 elite level type players.
And then if you keep going down, like if I said DJU was at Clemson, Jaden DeLaura was at was Washington? Was that where he was? Where was
sure.
He?
Yeah.
Craig. He was somewhere else. The quarterback at Arizona.
Was at Washington State.
Washington State, yeah. Okay, he's at Washington State. Shadur Sanders was at Jackson State.
Those are all really great academic guys, huh?
I just hope they're
the study group among them.
I hope that they're progressing towards a degree. And then I don't know, maybe one of them is a grad transfer. I'm not sure who would be in that mix, but good luck to them. By the way, at this date,